Memes play a key role in how we experience social media and the internet. They help us make sense of culture, cope with chaos, bond with others, and they're arguably one of, if not the most fastest moving forms of expression that we have today. But here's the thing. While we usually think of memes as purely internet-based, they actually precede the internet and have a long cultural history. It just so happens to be that what we see online today is their latest form. And as someone who proudly identifies as a meme connoisseur, I wanted to put together something a little different. A full-on ode to memes, if you will. One that traces their journey from prehistoric times to TikTok. This video is for anyone who loves digital culture, but especially those who are late millennial or early Gen Z and have been chronically online at any point in their lifetime. I will absolutely be unlocking some core internet memories for you in this video. Let's get started. So what is a meme? Well, if you Google it, it'll tell you two things. One, that it's an image, video, piece of text, etc., typically humorous in nature, that's copied and spread rapidly by internet users. The second thing it'll tell you is that it's an element of culture or system of behavior passed from one individual to another by imitation or means, which is exactly how it was defined by Richard Dawkins, a British ethologist who actually was the first person to come up with or coin the term meme in the first place. Now, a little bit of context here before we proceed. An ethologist is a scientist who studies animal behavior, specifically instinct, survival, and evolution. I know that field of work sounds like it's irrelevant to memes, but just walk with me for a bit because it's gonna make sense, I promise. In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, Dawkins explores theories around natural selection and evolution, like any ethologist would, but specifically zooming in on the role genes play in the evolutionary process by being selfish, in the literal sense, so that they can increase their chances of survival and replications because genes obviously survive by replicating. The book is 13 chapters in total, and in chapter 11, Dawkins applies his focus on the evolution of genes to culture, specifically highlighting cultural transmission, saying most of what is unusual about man can be summed up in one word: culture. I use this word not in its snobbish sense, but as a scientist uses it. Cultural transmission is analogous to genetic transmission in that, although basically conservative, it can give rise to a form of evolution, which makes complete sense when you think about the fact that right after we pass on our genetics, because our genes are just inherent to who we are and a product of human replication, the very next thing we pass on is culture. So food, music, traditions, beliefs, behaviors, trends. It's how we stay connected and withstand the test of time as time passes. And it is in this chapter where Dawkins invents the term meme, saying the new soup, referring to the gene pool where our individual traits come from, is the soup of human culture. We need a name for the new replicator, a noun that conveys the idea of a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. Mimeme comes from a suitable Greek root, but I want a monosyllable that sounds a bit like gene. I hope my classicist friends will forgive me if I abbreviate meme to meme. It should be pronounced to rhyme with cream. He states, examples of memes are tunes, ideas, catchphrases, clothes, fashions, ways of making pots or of building arches. Just as genes propagate themselves in the gene pool by leaping from body to body via sperms or eggs, memes propagate themselves in the meme pool by leaping from brain to brain via a process which, in the broad sense, can be called imitation. If a scientist hears or reads about a good idea, he passes it on to his colleagues and his students. He mentions it in his articles and his lectures. And if the idea catches on, it can be said to propagate itself, spreading from brain to brain. As my colleague N.K. Humphrey neatly summed up in an earlier draft of this chapter, memes should be regarded as living structures, not just metaphorically, but technically. When you plant a fertile meme in my mind, you literally parasitize my brain, turning it into a vehicle for the meme's propagation in just the way that a virus may parasitize the genetic mechanism of a host cell. And this isn't just a way of talking. The meme, for say, belief in life after death, is actually realized physically millions of times over as a structure in the nervous systems of individual men. So yeah, memes are basically the cultural version of genes because, like genes, memes replicate by being shared, they mutate by being changed or altered to fit a niche or specific interests, and they also deal with the pressures of natural selection too, because memes are ultimately a product of our larger environment, and some die out, some go viral, and some become immortal. Now, the term meme was first coined in 1976, but when we think of memes today, we think of the internet, right? Because the general use of the internet didn't really happen until the mid to late 90s. But based on Dawkins' definition, memes being culturally transmitted, that means that memes have been around since way before the internet. That means that memes have existed since prehistoric times. We're talking tool making, fire making, hunting methods, cooking, religion, spirituality, art, all of it, because they were passed down and transformed just like genes. That said, let's go back in time and take a look at one of the first memes we know of. So you know how growing up when you were in school, the boys in class used to draw phallic outlines and it was like the funniest thing in the world? Like maybe they'd draw them with chalk when you were out playing during recess, or they'd pass notes with them around class, or you'd open up your textbook and there was one drawn in the most creative place from a previous owner. Well, it turns out that that's not just the world's oldest joke, but also one of the first memes that date back to prehistoric times even. Yes, drawing of are one of the earliest memes recorded in human history. Back in the days of the cavemen, dating as far back as like 28 to 30,000 years ago, prehistoric humans carved prehistoric peens into caves and objects across the world. I would show pictures of these carvings and artifacts, but I'm not trying to risk getting striked by YouTube. So if you're interested, you can Google it yourself. Found in a cave in Germany, the Hohlfels phallus is a sculpture of a phallus that's projected to be about 28,000 years old, which dates back to when modern humans were walking around Europe living as hunter-gatherers. And around the same time period, over in France and Spain, the Chevet and El Castillo caves had phallic carvings etched onto their walls. Even the ancient Romans were participants in this meme because they literally graffitied them across Roman cities and towns like Pompeii. An actual piece of this history was recently discovered by biochemist Dylan Herbert during an excavation where he came across a stone with an explicitly carved phallus with these words etched right above it, which translates to the name of this person, the shitter, meaning this was a very obvious way of trolling someone. And carvings weren't the only memes to exist before the internet. A lot of widely recognized symbols and famous catchphrases and public art are memes that existed before the World Wide Web. We've all heard the magical word abracadabra at some point in our lives, whether it's in Disney movies, birthday party magician performances, literature, or a Lady Gaga song. Well, the famous incantation is a meme because it's been culturally replicated for centuries, with its earliest known use being the mid-1500s. And you know what else is a meme? The graffiti S symbol, formerly known as the cool S or universal S that we all grew up drawing. Though its origins are still unknown to this day, it's been recorded as seen since the 60s, and it's one of the most widely recognized symbols that has been culturally transmitted for years, appearing across continents, which makes it a meme by definition because it is spread through imitation and is shared as part of classroom and even graffiti culture. Even The peace sign is a meme, with it originating in 1958 as a symbol for the British nuclear disarmament. The symbol has made its way through contemporary history as a sign of resistance in the 60s and the 70s during the American Civil Rights Movement and Vietnam War protests. And then by the time the 80s and the 90s came around, it transformed into a fashion statement. And then by the time the 2000s came around, up until pretty much today, it's become a key part of pop culture and is everybody's go-to pose. So the abracadabra, cool S, and peace sign are just a few of many memes that have come about in human society sans internet. And then once the internet came into play, memes started to take on an entirely new form. The very first internet meme was the dancing baby meme created by animator Robert Lur. Please excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. In 1996. Robert's first draft of the dancing baby was actually a dancing skeleton, but John Chadwick, who was his team member at the time, swapped the dancing skeleton with the dancing baby and then demoed it at a conference where it was actually discarded for being, quote, disturbing. And that judgment was actually so far off because it ended up being recovered by another animator by the name of Ron Lucer, who made a couple tweaks to it and posted it to CompuServe, which was an internet service and forum at the time. And then developer John Woodall turned it into a GIF, which made it easier to share, and it just went viral from there. In fact, it went so viral that it ended up being referenced on TV on the Ally McBeal show and The Simpsons. Oh, and before I move on to the next meme, I do want to mention how Dancing Baby made its way around the internet, because obviously at the time in like the late 90s, there were no major social media platforms with DMs or a feed to share content on. So during this time, the early meme internet period, memes were shared either via email or links to forum sites. The next early internet meme is the hamster dance, and its format pioneered a key internet audio format we see all over social media today, which is sped up songs. So in 1998, the hamster dance came about, which is basically the second meme to really like gain traction on the internet. And this meme was placed on a web page created by Canadian art student Deirdre Lacarte, and it was a gif of multiple rows of hamsters dancing with a sped up version of Roger Miller's song Whistle Stop, which was written for the Disney movie Robin Hood. Turns out I've never heard the original song because out of all the Disney movies I have seen, I've never seen Robin Hood, or at least maybe I have or I don't remember it. But the speed up version of Whistle Stop is this, and I'm gonna have to sing it or, rhythmize it, I guess, because if I put the actual song, I'll probably get a copyright strike. So yeah, that famous sound is a sped up version of an original song, which is like the blueprint if you think about it, because most of us associate sped up or even like slowed down music with TikTok. But this meme that came about in the late 90s was actually the first to use it. Like, this isn't TikTok exclusive, like Hamster Dance essentially walked, so TikTok songs could run. Moving on quickly though, some other early internet memes are Peanut Butter Jelly Time, that debuted on Albino Black Sheep, which was like a site with a bunch of memes and video games on it, and honestly it was my personal favorite at the time. And then by the time 2005 came around and YouTube hit the scene on February 14th, what a Valentine's Day gift to the world. We had memes like the Numa Numa video that was the guy lip singing the song, Charlie Bit My Finger, Chocolate Rain, the Leave Britney Alone video, and so many more. Now, as I'm going through these early memes, you might be thinking to yourself, well, these are not memes, they're videos. And you'd be right if you're thinking about it in context to contemporary memes, contemporary times, the memes we know now, which are basically templates that people, hop in and out of participating in. And we're gonna get to that. But you gotta remember that during this time period, memes were basically just like viral digital phenomenon, like catchy standalone moments caught on camera or catchy manufactured content. In the early days of memes were basically one-off viral sensations that we as viewers were spectators of as opposed to participants of, especially because at that time, content creation in general was still pretty centralized and tech limited. As the internet and social media started to age and transform through the early 2000s into the 2010s, our consumption of and relationship to memes transformed as well. With the rise of platforms like Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, we'll get to TikTok, we shifted into participatory memes, which is what we consider and associate with memes today. Because while YouTube, which launched in 2005, was the first mainstream platform to popularize user-generated video and content, it wasn't until the rise of these other platforms that mass engagement with social media through posting, commenting, liking, and sharing really took off. And when you combine that with the simultaneous introduction of smartphones, which let people access these platforms anytime and anywhere instead of waiting to get home to a desktop, that growth happened exponentially. Before the introduction of these platforms and smartphones in the early 2000s, online forums and chat rooms did allow for internet participation, but doing so was also very heavily stigmatized because there was a very big fear around privacy and talking to strangers online. And I remember this because I lived it. Like, you'd hear about it in the media, and in turn, your parents would warn you about it. You'd hear about it from your teachers in school as well. It was everywhere. But when platforms like Facebook came around in the later 2000s, it was packaged as a way to keep up with people you already know, which also kind of like normalized using the internet socially, and in turn made it easier and more socially acceptable to engage with broader communities and even engage with niche interest groups. And I feel like it eventually paved the way for the rise of participatory memes. And by participatory memes, I'm talking about memes that operated on a template-like format that anyone could add their 2 cents to, like the Why You Know memes of Tumblr, which could be easily generated on IMG Flip, the condescending Wonka meme, the Kermit That's None of My Business meme, and the Arthur Fist meme, amongst so many others that come up even today. And at the same time, reaction memes started to become a thing too, which are also inherently participatory and are now very heavy and all over social media, and so much so that even the reply section for each platform and even iMessage has a designated area where you can choose one, like Confused Nick Young, Smoking Ben Affleck, and so many more. So through this shift in social media, with the rise of new platforms and the ability to access them anytime through our phones, and memes playing a central role in how we communicate and participate online with them, we also started to kind of embody memes too. Like, think about TikTok trends, where people are like literally physically inserting themselves into memes through skits, dances, or even sound-based formats, essentially making memes a tool used for storytelling, identity, and even connection. Like, we've all come across a TikTok before that made us realize we have not had a unique experience. Or even think about how many times you've referenced a meme in a conversation, or realized that you share a common interest with someone who referenced a niche meme. And a testament to memes being a tool for storytelling and identity and connection is the fact that political campaigns use them and businesses use them, and people get paid to consult others on how to use them as well. Memes are a form of gossip, a form of press, social commentary, and dare I say, memes are universal coping mechanisms, especially as they relate to world events like a pandemic or personal milestones like parenthood or grad school, or phases of life like menopause or heartbreak. Memes are a social glue, and I don't mean social as in social media, but social as in relating to community. And that also makes them a language. Over time, memes build on one another and become a language, and one you understand through use, reference, or by making the effort to learn and catch up. So yeah, next time you see or engage with a meme, know that it's more than just a joke. It's a part of an evolving cultural system that dates back to prehistoric times that we're all actively contributing to today for those in the future to look back on. This is a bit of a heavy one, and I hope it was enjoyable for you to listen to. My name is Crystal, if you're new here, and I'm a freelance social media specialist covering all things social, so news, culture, 101s. And if this is something you're interested in and you'd like to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button because there's more to come. Till next time.